Good evening. Welcome to the St. Mary's County Emergency Services Board meeting. Today's April 14th. With us, my name is Gary Bell. I'm the chair of the Emergency Services Board. With us, we also have Sean Davidson, our county rescue chief. Steve Walker, our director of emergency services, will not be with us this evening. Dr. Dan Gary, our medical director, is also unfortunately won't be here this evening. We have Carol Boehm, the co-chair or the chair of the Rescue Services Association. She's our co-chair. Hattie Norris, the vice chair of the Emergency Services Board. Jay Nelson, president of the St. Mary's County Fire Board Association, and CP Medinsky, our county fire chief. We do ask that if you have a cell phone to please put it on mute. And with that, we'll start our meeting. So if we can approve our minutes from our last meeting.
Move to accept the minutes of the February 10th meeting as presented.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Sean, second by CP to accept our minutes from our last meeting. All those approved say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Any no's say no. Thank you. With that, we can move into our, I guess, our CAD replacement update.
Good morning, or good evening. Chris Thompson, Emergency Services, 911 Center. At this point, the update on the CAD is we have completed the technical review of the vendors that were accepted by the County Procurement Office and waiting for them to give the go-ahead to move forward, which would be the presentations from the CAD vendors.
All right. Is there any questions from the board?
To translate that into not techies, we have permission to start looking at the ones we liked?
Based off the scoring that the procurement office is still working on. The scoring committee was our department, the sheriff's office, and then procurement office. So once that has been tabulated and they've vetted through the vendors, then they will move forward to the per se dog and pony show, the presentations from the vendors.
So the top scoring vendors are the ones that will be actually
Correct.
looking at
That is
their
correct.
product. Okay.
Yes, Chief. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Harris Radio, did we have an update for that? Thank you, Larry.
Yes, sir. Harris Radio, everything seems to be working fine. Having no issues as of right now. Presently, we are updating personalities and in all the fire and EMS radios. We are trying to get this done so we can communicate with, or the fire and EMS personnel can communicate with Calvert County. Presently, we are over halfway through fire and EMS. And it's going on very smoothly and very quickly.
All right. Is there any comments or questions for Larry?
I want to thank, on behalf of the fire chiefs, want to thank you for that, taking care of that and upgrading them in a timely. We appreciate that.
Trying to speed it up as fast as I can.
No, you're doing great. We appreciate it.
You're awesome, Larry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Larry. LoSAP update.
This one's me. I I put together a memo for this meeting. At our February meeting, we actually approved some recommendations that were put together by our working group that was comprised of Paula Turner, who is the chair of our LoSAP committee for the county, J.A. Nelson, and me. And we brought those to the board, to the Emergency Services Board. Actually, first, we discussed them briefly in December, along with our recommendations for how to deal with managing LoSAP allocations for folks who were unable to participate in volunteer service due to restrictions because of the COVID pandemic. Following on from that, there was some more discussion. We made some more recommendations that the Emergency Services Board actually took up in February, that it included some things like adjustments to the payout for LoSAP, access to other benefits, based on LoSAP eligibility, et cetera. That was approved by the Emergency Services Board at our February meeting. We forwarded a letter to the commissioners that Chairman Bell signed out for us on the 10th of February. We have, as of yet, not received any response to that letter and to those recommendations. So what we'd like to do, I think, is just send another letter over to the commissioners that says, hey guys, you're doing the budget right now. We know you're doing the budget right now, but we'd like to know, where we stand with this. LoSAP is an important it's an important driver for volunteerism in our system. I know during the budget workshops, they made a lot of noise about making sure they protected LoSAP, and I know that was very much at the forefront of their conversation. I sat through 5 hours worth of meeting where they said it probably a dozen times, but they haven't answered us about that. So I guess what I'd like is to endorse the chair signing off on another letter to the commissioners asking for status of our LoSAP recommendations.
I make a motion. We have the chair send a reminder letter or endorsement letter on all of them, updated.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by CP, second by JA, that we send another letter to the commissioners in reference to the LoSAP information that we sent in February. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
The only thing, Gary, I'd like to add is I think, and as Sean alluded to, we put a lot of time and effort into making sure that we looked at the retention. I think that's the biggest thing that I think everyone should draw from this is the changes we're looking to make is truly for retention down the road of our volunteer system. And I think it's really important that they take a look at this and if they need to come back and look at it different ways, that's fine. But, we really want to get this moving forward.
Yeah. So any other comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So ordered. So Mary Ann, if I guess you can let Steve know or staff, I know you have the letter there. We can forward that to commissioners and then, we'd like to at least get a response that they received it. And then, we can go from there. So
I'd be willing to bet you that Mary Ann will have it ready for you when we leave.
all right, thank you.
But that way.
So EMS supplemental staffing update.
Hey, good evening. So we currently have, I'm happy to say, we currently have hired 7 county employees now, or 7 employees that are now county employees. And we have initiated staffing Station 29. And so we're staffing Station 29 now. So that's with 7 employees. That's a part-time schedule. And then it also, those employees are allowed to work on the contract as well because we're limited in the number of hours based on what we got back from the commissioners. So we have another group of folks that are in the background check phase now. which we hope, because it takes about 45 days to 60 days to do the background check, and we are hoping that they're going to be nearly completed within the next week or so, which will allow us towards the end of the month to do another orientation and bring on some more employees. Of course, we're going to be meeting with the contractor to make sure that there's no scheduling conflicts as we work through that process. We have another group of folks after that that have not worked on the contract that we put through an assessment center, that they have just started the background phase. And I think that's 7 or 8 employees that we're potentially would be looking at. So those are the employees that have not worked on the contract. We had to do the interview process, the assessment center piece that went along with that, and then now they're eligible to start and move into the background process. So we're starting that. So that's another 40 days to get them to move through that process. And it's just, the background and the depth of the background takes 45 to 60 days, and we've tried to phase it out so we don't tax us. We're able to put people through. We're able to make sure we do efficient backgrounds, and we get it to the depth that we need. And so that's all I have for my update, unless you have questions.
You mentioned Company 29, so is that being staffed part-time, or is that
It is
full-time?
staffed. So if you look at the matrix, there's 5-day a week, there's 7-day a week, there's 3-day a week, there's 24 hours, 5 days a week in some stations. It is a 5-day a week station. So it is from 7 to 1900, Monday through Friday. And we chose it because we needed to pick a 5-day a week station based on the number of people and the number of hours that they could work. And also there was a benefit as we were able to bring on a couple people that could function as paramedics. So about 50% of the time at Station 29, there's a paramedic ambulance or a medic ambulance that's up there. So it reduces the time that the Leonardtown Chase car needs to run north or Charles County needs to come into our area. So there's a big benefit to do that. That's why we chose the 5-day a week, because of personnel, because of the benefits. So as we bring these other people on, what we're going to look at is how many people do we have, and based on how many people we're going to be able to bring on, and the number of hours that they need to be able to work, and the hours that they can give us to work, will sort of help us decide which is the next station. So is it a 7-day a week station? Is it the 24-hour station? Those kind of things. So we have to put all those pieces together.
Okay. Is there any other questions?
That was 7 total that are on now, correct?
Correct.
And then you said there were some that were getting already to come on. How many is that?
So there are 7, 12. I'd have to go back and look at my numbers for the people that have not been on the contract that are in that process. I want to say it's 7 or 8 more,
Okay.
Right? So we have 7, 12, and I think 8 more that are currently would be in the process. And then anything else we would have to open back up. If we open back up, it would be on the hourly, because currently that's what we would be allowed to do. We wouldn't be allowed to offer or post for anything that's a full-time position until the budget is finalized and approved and signed off by the county commissioners. And so at that point in time, we would be able to open up and post for full-time positions.
And out of the next ones that you're bringing on, what would be the stop? What stations would you look at staffing then?
So we have to finish the background, and if they all finish the background, we would have to put them through what is our standard orientation, and that would take a couple of days, probably based on the number of hours that they would need to work for the contractors. So we didn't create a conflict and pull people off schedules and those kind of things. It's based on the number that finish the background, and then it's based on the hours that they can submit and be available for working. So it might be a 5-day, it might be a 7-day a week station, but it depends on what the fit's going to be. So it's a couple different things we have to factor in to get people scheduled.
So I think one of the things just to make sure that this is clear is that what we're doing in this process is working with the contractor to phase the contract staff out of the stations as we phase the county's employees into those stations.
Correct.
And that's why having them having enough people to block out for the staff for that entire, for the demand for
Phase
the
in, phase-
station is a driver in how that works.
Correct. And we're limited in the hours because they're hourly part-time employees. So we're limited in the number of hours that they can work. So they can work for us the number of hours that is allowable, and then they can continue to work for the contractor on the contract, still same uniform, doing the same thing, doing the same work, might be in the same station.
So for us, is that based on a 40-hour work week for the county?
So for us, it's based on a 24-hour work week, 24 hours per week has been our cap. Yes.
And that's because of the way the commissioners approved the original hire as hourly employees
Gotcha.
versus, now, in the budget submission, the request is
Full-time.
full-time employees.
Full-time employees.
So, and my understanding is that a not inconsiderable number of these people that we're already working with are interested in that rollover when it happens, as far as we understand.
The majority of the people that are currently in what we call I call the pipeline, that are the current contracted folks, are interested in coming on in a full-time capacity. So it makes it easier because we did the assessment center with the Rescue Association, and pretty much everybody signed off on these folks coming onto the contract. So it's made it easier because they're already working, doing the work. We know what kind of work they're going to do. They're going to do a good job, and they've had some background checks. So it's made it easier to bring them in the system. The people that are going to be what we would call have never worked on the contract have to go through our assessment center, and it takes just a little bit longer.
I think that speaks to wanting to make sure that we're getting quality
Correct.
versus quantity.
Correct. Yes.
Are a lot of them EMTs that are already in our rescue squads?
I would say a high percentage
Okay.
are. You've got a few folks that are from out of the county, that haven't been in the system. But let's say maybe they have been in the Southern Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's a
couple
good
folks.
opportunity for somebody to do, something within our county that, they enjoy doing. And
Well, we have to be careful. We have to balance this thing.
Right, sure.
Because, if past is prologue, we have seen other jurisdictions make the transition that we are trying to make and watched their volunteer services implode. And it is absolutely no secret that that is the thing that happens when care isn't taken. And I'm going to prove that I'm not a politician by saying when you get politicians involved in these kinds of things, you tend to go for the least common denominator instead of go for the thing that's in the best interest of all of the people that are involved with it. I think one of the things that we have going for us right now is that so much care has been taken by our partners in DES, and I think that there's been a lot of frustration from everybody. I've been frustrated some by communication problems that we've had and by things that we've tripped over that we really didn't honestly need to trip over. And knowing some of the things that I know now, I recognize that some of the reasons that we were tripping over ourselves was that there were well-meaning people who put blocks in our way who didn't really mean to put blocks in our way because they thought they were helping, but they didn't help the conversation any. What we've got to be careful of is that we don't hire away everybody who's willing to volunteer their time, because bluntly, we can't afford to pay for what we get from our volunteers. We can't. There's no way. So our government in St. Mary's County has already demonstrated that they are not willing to pay for the value that the volunteers bring into the service. They're balking at paying for slightly less than half of what the volunteers contribute to the service. So, there's some struggles as far as that goes, and we have to be very mindful of that. We have to pay attention to the numbers of people that we're pulling off of those volunteer roles, because somebody who is, working a 12 or 24-hour shift for the county on the ambulance at Lexington Park is then going to want to go home and go to freaking sleep. They're not going to want to go home and run calls down at 2nd District or run calls in Hollywood, because they're worn out after that shift, right? And so, you run the risk of thinning the herd, if you will, in the volunteer service if you push too much on that. I do believe that there are folks who are in the pool that have been hired that are, at least to a limited extent, still continuing to support the volunteer services. But this is one of those things where it goes back to why LoSAP and having those kinds of benefits for folks to be a part of the volunteer service still is an important thing, so that we don't have to get to a place where we're asking the county to pay to have people at Mechanicsville 24 hours a day, because right now what we're doing is, a 5-day a week during the daytime gig, right? So there are a lot. This is a much more complex issue than people want to let it be. You want it to be surface. You want it to be easy. You want to be able to say, oh well, we're just going to hire people to do it, and blah blah blah. It's not that simple. There are a lot of balls in the air. And I know that Carol and I have worked really hard together to make sure that our the concerns that are coming back to us from the departments are heard and understood. We're working really hard to improve the quality of the communication that's happening between the association, the Ambulance and Rescue Squad Association, and the Department of Emergency Services. We're working really hard to make sure that what we build here is functional today and can grow to continue to be functional going down the road. So that's I'm going to climb down off of my soapbox now, because I feel like I've kind of preached a little bit, but I think that it's important to recognize that none of these things are easy answers. Very, very little of this is a binary, and so we're trying our best. I think our partners at DES are trying their best. I think that we're all a little bit frustrated in some respects, but I also know that. John Roach said this to me once, and it's one of those pearls of wisdom that I have always really appreciated. People who are thoughtful people will disagree sometimes on the details when they agree on the principle. And that is the place I think that we are in largely, is that we're trying to line up on details, because everybody recognizes that at the end of the day what we're interested in doing is making sure that John Q. Citizen in St. Mary's County and Jane, our visitor to St. Mary's County, are getting the service that they deserve if they need it from us.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? So the volunteers that we do hire for the county, they're still allowed to volunteer.
Correct.
Right. I mean, we're not.
So the other, I think the ALS contract, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't allow for that. And,
Really?
and I think that will, would change. But so anybody that would work for us would be allowed to volunteer. And what I've seen is, the current contract with a group of folks, there'd be times where there's only one, and somebody calls out, somebody's sick, there's just not availability, and we've got one, contractor or career staff, and we've got a volunteer that's also riding on the ambulance. So it's a split crew. It's a volunteer and a paid. I have seen people that have come on to get their field training in the ambulance as a third person, those kind of things in there. So it's a combination effort. I've seen that, I'll show up on a call to run a medic call, and it's a split crew. It's a volunteer and a paid career. So I think the integration piece, like anything else, I think it's working good. I've seen some good integration, and I think we're continuing to do that. And even, if they're county staff, I have no issues with if we're short, we need to staff an ambulance, we can staff that with a mixed crew, and there's not a problem with that.
All right. Thank you.
Good. Thank
Chief
you.
Stamey, thank you. All right, next we have the Emergency Services Report. Gerald?
So I think I have a couple things, right?
Yep.
On the list. So there's a lot happening at Emergency Services. Chris, Dave Stamey, and Larry have reported on. We're still supporting the vaccination site and their testing sites. We do have a Great Mills vaccination site this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We're filling PPE requests for fire and EMS, and so that's all continuing. I'm going to go to the next. The
American Rescue Plan.
American Rescue Plan was voted in. Right now, it's, as I understand it, it's at the Department of Budget and Management at the state. I've been told there's approximately $22 million allocated for St. Mary's County, half for this year, 2021, half for 2022, to support economic recovery, openings of schools, child cares, broadband accessibility, COVID, vaccination efforts, housing assistance, and other things revolving around COVID. I understand we're supposed to get some more detail within the next month, sometime in May. They still have it working out the logistics and the requirements and how it's all going to be broken down. So it's very similar to the CARES Act. I think they're going to have a few more stringent guidance on how it's spent and where it goes. But again, we're just getting bits and pieces all the time. Nothing official from the state yet. So hopefully by the middle of May.
All right. Any questions? Fire safety, public education?
Oh, that'll be me. Since 1 January, I know that there's been a lot of media and social media of some significant fires or multiple fires in the county. So I reached out to Maryland State Fire Marshal's office and with some assistance of Chief Nelson. Currently, there's been in St. Mary's County approximately 30 working incidents, structural fires. Out of those structural fires, there's been 21 of them have been investigated by the Maryland State Fire Marshal's office, and the other 9 were probable cause at the time when the unit showed up. But some of these causes were nothing suspicious. Everything, none of them were contributing factors, were mostly malfunctioning HVAC units, space heaters, cooking, electrical, and some with some smoking material. So we just ask everybody to please stay safe, practice fire safety at home, and we certainly have discussed it amongst the volunteer chiefs that we'll certainly continue to do our public education as we are. So had a tough since the beginning of the year, but we're hoping that's calming down now. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for CP or? All right. Moving along, looks like the last thing on our agenda is the Fire Rescue Appreciation Day. I believe the commissioners are looking for, I guess, whether we're looking to have the Fire Appreciation Day, not to have, or something kind of in between, and if there's any conversation or from the board as far as, what route we want to take on that.
I would say if we're at a point where we can have it again, I'd like to move forward to having it again. But if we need to make modifications to that, then, that is what it is at that point. It's mid to late August, so generally.
Typically, it's the second Saturday of August, so that would be August 14th this year. Last year would have been 30 years that they've been doing it, started in 1990, but because of COVID was canceled. And again, so we were looking for some direction. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, food and vendors and that type of thing, so we want to get on schedules.
That's just my thought. I mean,
Mark and Kelly put a lot of work into pulling that thing together, and it is all, I've never been to one,
you should go.
which shocks people when I say it, but I've never been to one. But they're, I know, you would think that sometime I would have, it's really popular. It's a morale driver. People like it. Everybody likes feeling appreciated, and this is a really good material way that the county demonstrates that appreciation. I'll be blunt about it. I'm not convinced that in the end of August we're going to be able to have a group the size that we're talking about safely. I just don't think so. So I think that I think that they absolutely need to look at something. I'm just not convinced that, hey, let's get everybody together in the middle of Leonardtown is going to be the wisest course of action by then. As we've opened and as the COVID numbers have increased, St. Mary's County, I don't think people realize how freaking lucky we are in St. Mary's County. For one thing, that we've got Dr. Mina Brewster, who, love her or hate her, she has the best interests of the people in this county at heart, and she has pushed really hard to get us to the place that we are with our vaccinations and to get our community as safe as it possibly can be. Our COVID numbers are going up again across the state because people are out and around and they're moving more, and there's a little bit of a false sense of security, I think, for some folks that, I'm all kinds of vaccinated now, so I'm going to run out here and do stuff. Not thinking about the fact that it is still possible to move the virus around if you are vaccinated. So you might not get sick, but you might make other people sick. And I think that as long as that kind of lackadaisical attitude about it goes, we're tired, we're fatigued. I'm sick of coordinating masks to my outfits. But it's the place that we're in right now, and it's what we need to be doing. And so I'm digressing a little bit, and I know it. I think the county should do something for FRAD. I think that it's an important recognition for people. But I am not sanguine that they'll be able to do something in person.
Yeah, typically, I know over the last few years we've been tracking, and there's been 400 plus each year. So that is a very large crowd. Social distancing is really not a good option, so.
And for planning purposes, I mean, they got to start now, so.
Right.
But I agree, I think we should, if we could have it, I think it's a very appreciative and, thing, a morale thing for our volunteers, but certainly we can't predict the future, but.
Well, I think,
to see.
Obviously the issue is, like Gerald is, putting 400 people in one spot and trying to do the social distance, and, is that the right thing to do? I agree with JA that I'd like to have it also, but I'm not sure it's the correct thing or the right thing to do, so.
Well, Gerald, can we get a group together, maybe come up with some alternate ideas and, maybe think outside the box a little bit and see if there's something we can do?
I think that's what we're looking for, some direction.
Yeah.
Again, there's still a lot of uncertainty.
I'd be glad to come, if we want to get together, have a meeting or something, and,
Absolutely.
Yep. And as CP said, right, planning is getting on people's, even if it's
Of course.
some type of modified version, it's only a few months out, so that would be excellent.
Even if we scaled it back, and let each individual Department of Rescue Squad have their time at each place or something, if we, where we could have it within the social distancing guidelines, and the amount of people, so.
And I think it would have to, like you said, it would have to be discussed and to figure out how we do this. Some departments may have 50 people that attends, others may have, and then, so how do you adjust that time? So,
Correct.
What's it, 214 or something like that in the park, Ken?
320.
323 members on the roster at Election Park Rescue Squad, so
Yeah, they're a big participant every year.
that's a chunk of folk.
Yeah.
So why don't we have some
Yeah, absolutely.
discussions this week, and maybe get a couple people together and determine what we need to do, so we can let the commissioners know and
Sounds good?
Yep, we can do that. We'll do that. All right. Thank you, Gerald. So with that, we can move into board member time. Is there any discussion amongst the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Carol?
I sent a letter last evening, sorry for 2 emails, but one page dropped off on its own, that we addressed to the commissioners about the Rescue Squad Association's position on building the career staffing. There has been a lot of rumor and innuendo out in the public. Many players have decided to address what the RSA's position actually was. And so with a discussion with all of the EMS chiefs in the county, we decided that we needed to put what the RSA felt the direction should be put in writing and addressed to all parties, the Emergency Services Board, Department of Emergency Services, and to the commissioners, so that there's no question about what the RSA supports.
All right.
And Mary Ann, I'm supposed to ask you to add it to the agenda after the meeting, please. Are there any questions?
I mean, for me, I got your letter and I read it, and I agree with what the RSA is trying to do. For us on the fire side, it's kind of more difficult to chime in because we're not involved in the discussions between your association and the commissioners, because it hasn't really affected us so far. So, for me, it's hard to have an opinion, not being able to attend either your meetings or some of the other meetings that's going on with the commissioners. So, like I say, it's for us, and I can't speak for the other two, but, it's hard to chime in and, tell you how I feel. But I do appreciate the letter and knowing, like I say, where the Rescue Association stands. And, if you're looking for some support from us, I think we'd be glad to sit down and discuss and see how we can help her, figure out where the next step is. So, does anybody else have any input or comments?
Good.
All right.
That was it. I have strived since the beginning of my term as chair to include fire. CP and JA are very good about attending the meetings and chiming in when they need to, and we really appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you, Carol.
Are there any other board members?
Yep, just one thing. I just would like to recognize that this week is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. So from someone that's sat in that center and worked there for numerous years, I know how hard the job can be. And so from all of us that the Fire Board Association represents, all the departments, I want to thank all the dispatchers for the work they do each day. Many times they are overlooked in their jobs, so just want to make sure they're recognized during this week that's dedicated to them, and just say thanks for what they do. So.
Thank you.
I'd like to shout out Amy Carter, who is the goddess of all things electrical in the room. I don't remember that she was the voice from above that yelled at Gerald for not talking into the microphone, and has been awesome to work with in all these things. And I did she was responsible for pulling together a hey, go do the census so you get counted thing, and I did a video for her with that, and it was great fun. She does a lot of work for us in the county. I think that's worth saying something about her real quick.
All right, anybody else? With that, is there any public comment?
Oh, can we plug Go Get Your Vaccine?
I'm sorry.
Go get your shot.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, other than that, we'll call the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So motion by Jay, second by CP to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, thank you.